Welcome back, BookTube. Thank you very much for watching this video. Today I'm going to be reviewing Armada by Ernest Cline. Now before I get into the plot and ultimately my thoughts on the book, I just want to give you a little bit of background. I read Ready Player One last year, I believe, and I enjoyed it. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. It was an easy, fun read. I've recommended it to several people who I thought would enjoy it, and I bought it for someone as a Christmas present. However, I didn't understand people who worshipped the book. Like, I saw several booktubers who put it as like their #1 book of 2014, and to me that was a little bit sad, because if Ready Player One really was the best book in 2014, to me it almost says you read a lot of bad books, but maybe that's just me. Maybe people really did love it. But especially after I finished reading it, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, and granted it was a debut novel, so I didn't want to judge it too harshly, it was a very simple story written very simply. That, and there were several strands of logic that were presented in the novel that really didn't stand up, which is probably just me nitpicking. But while I liked the book, I had some issues with it. Like I said, I also understand it was a debut novel, so I was really interested to see what Ernest Cline would do next, and specifically if he would address any of what I thought were pretty obvious issues with his first book. So Armada came out, and I'm someone, I don't buy a lot of books. Well, I say I buy a lot of books, but I don't buy a lot of new books, because why would I buy a new book when I can buy 5 or 6 used books? Especially if I'm not for sure if I'm going to like the book or not. So my wife was able to put a hold on it, and we eventually got it from a local library. The plot's pretty simple, like Ready Player One. However, unlike Ready Player One, which was set kind of in a dystopian future, this is set in current day. It follows Zach Lightman, who grew up with just him and his mom. His dad died when I think he was 1 year old in an accident at work. And Zach grew up very obviously missing his father, very much idolizing him. His mother kept a lot of his father's things that she basically gave to Zach when he was like 10 or 11 or whatever, and his dad was an 80s nerd, which made Zach into a present day nerd, very much in love with a bunch of the 80s sci-fi movies and video games. And Zach became a huge nerd of this game, Armada. Now, Armada was a game back in the 80s, I know that much. I never played it myself, so I'm not for sure if the Armada base in the books is based on the 80s video game. I'm assuming it is somewhat, but don't quote me on that. But anyway, in this game, Armada, it's basically about these aliens that invade Earth using drones, and humans are able to capture and reverse engineer the technology and come up with your own drones. So in Armada, you are piloting drones, fighting off an alien invasion. There's also like a sister game where you're fighting via drones on the ground, whereas Armada is like space-oriented. And Zach is actually a very good Armada player. He's ranked number 6 worldwide. Pretty early on in the book, you find out that Armada is actually a reality, that this government, not really like the US government, but kind of a coalition of Earth governments, have been keeping from people, and that there actually is an invasion, and that Armada was simply used as a training tool. And since Zach is one of the best players, that he's since then been recruited to help stave off human extinction. That's basically the book. It takes place within a 24-hour time span. You start off in the morning. Well, no, I do apologize for that. I guess it's like a 48-hour time span, because it starts one morning, then the next morning he goes to go to school, and everything breaks. The EDA shows up in his school to recruit him, and things go from there. On Goodreads, I gave this book a rating of 2 out of 5 stars. I think in reality, like on a 10-star basis, I would give it 4.5, maybe 5 stars. This book was a really easy read. It doesn't take long to get through. It reminded me a lot of Ready Player One in the fact that you had a teenager who came from more of like a broken home, whose one thing was gaming, and who then has to basically, except instead of saving a virtual reality game, now he's actually saving the world, and instead of it being dystopian, it's present day. But I felt the strength of this book was its 80s references. He quoted Star Wars a lot, he quoted several other movies, he referenced a lot of movies in the story, and that part was enjoyable. However, it wasn't enough for me. In my opinion, this book reminded me a lot of, well, I would consider myself in a lot of ways a nerd. Growing up, at least, one of the biggest ways I was a nerd was I enjoyed Sci-Fi Channel movies. I'm talking like Boa, Boa 2, Boa 3, Python, Python 2, Python 3, Boa versus Python, Boa versus Python 2, Boa versus Python 3. I loved watching those movies. When it's an hour or an hour and a half long and there's crappy CGI and it's very predictable, it was fun entertainment. But I always remember thinking, wow, I wonder who gets paid to write these stories, because the story basically writes itself. It's so predictable, there's nothing complicated about that, there's no plot twist, it just seemed like an easy gig. And to me, Armada felt like one of those movies. It felt like I had read this story 100 times before. It felt like Ernest Cline took the easy way out. That he captured lightning in a bottle with Ready Player One, and he took a very easy story with very kind of weak characters and a weak storyline, and because of the 80 references, he was able to turn it into a successful novel. And it felt like instead of trying to improve on his writing, that he was basically just like, you know what, I'm going to change a couple of things, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, because it worked once, it'll work twice. But it didn't work quite as well, because I've read Ready Player One, and while I enjoyed it, I don't know if I would read it again, and Armada, to me, is not that much different. Every plot twist was telegraphed from a million miles away. This book did not surprise me at all. I thought the ending was pretty anticlimactic. I thought the characters were very much kind of eh. My two favorite characters were Chen and Wody, and they were kind of minor characters. They didn't have a lot of page time, if you will. They didn't play super important roles. I thought it was also weird how it's like people meet each other and at first they're like, oh, I don't know you, I don't like you, all this weird stuff's going on, I'm gonna be really standoffish. And then they're like, oh, you're a good video gamer, I'm a good video gamer, let's be best friends and save the world. A lot of it really felt forced. Not very much of the story felt natural. To me, this had all the cons of Ready Player One with very few of the pros. That being said, I don't know if I would consider this a bad book. And it's definitely not like Twilight bad, where you're reading it and you're just like, wow, did this person know how to spell or use basic punctuation? It really felt like Cline took the easy way out, and I'm pretty disappointed. At this point, I'm not very motivated to read any other books he publishes. There would have to be a lot of very good reviews from people I very much trust in order to get me to read his third book. To me, and I don't want to call Cline a bad writer, because I don't think I've seen enough to really judge that, but I don't think he's pushed himself any. I think he found a little niche, and he thinks if he throws in enough 80 references that people will be nostalgic and will really like his books. And maybe there are people out there that will, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think this is a book that you should be ashamed of for liking. But for me, it just didn't do it. I was very underwhelmed with this book. If this was a Sci-Fi Channel movie where I could have watched it in an hour and a half and just kind of turned my brain off, it would have been fairly enjoyable. But instead, it took me however long, I don't know, 9-10 hours to read it. And I'm a little bit miffed that I spent 9 or 10 hours reading this lackluster novel instead of reading another book that I might have really enjoyed. So those are my basic thoughts and feelings on the novel. Like I said, mostly negative. I don't think I would ever be able to recommend this book to anyone, but I could also see how someone could read it and get at least a little bit of enjoyment from it. It's not horrible. The story, well, I don't think is super great. It's something that people could enjoy. That concludes my remarks and thoughts, and I guess you could call it a review of Armada by Ernest Cline. Really kind of disappointed that he didn't push himself a little bit more. Really disappointed in the fact that I wasted the time reading the book, but I mean, I'm sure there are worse books out there. So if you read Armada, give me your thoughts. Also, if you read Ready Player One, give me your thoughts, because I don't quite understand why so many people went gaga over that book, when to me it was like, oh, that was a fun, easy read. But my opinions very rarely follow, well, I say they do. It's not unusual for me to have opinions that go against kind of the mainstream consensus, so I'm not that surprised in it. But thank you for watching. Just to give you all a heads up, I actually do have a Ready Player One review that is filmed. I just need to get edited, and hopefully will be up pretty soon. I actually filmed it with my wife. You can hear what I thought of it and a little bit more in depth, and also what my wife thought of it, because I think she has a pretty unique perspective. She doesn't read a lot of science fiction, and she's a big 80s fan. So I think it'll be a video worth watching. Thank you very much. Like I said, feel free to comment. Let me know your thoughts. I would really be interested to see if anyone disagrees with me on my opinions on Cline as an author. You can also like this video if you enjoyed it, or you can dislike the video if you absolutely hated it. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for the Ready Player One review with my wife, because that's always exciting. Anyways, I'll wrap it up now. Again, thanks for watching. Feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.